The desert was endless, a burning ocean of gold and silence. Men staggered under the weight of the sun, lips cracked, throats raw, eyes searching for water that was never there. The army of Alexander the Great had crossed rivers, mountains, and empires. But now, in 331 BCE, they were lost in the sands of Egypt, marching not for battle, not for plunder, but for a voice that would change history. Alexander had already broken the Persian Empire, defeated Darius III at Issus, and stood as master of the ancient world. Yet he was restless. Conquest was not enough. Victory left questions gnawing at his soul. Who was he? Merely the son of Philip of Macedon, or something greater? His mother, Olympias, had whispered since childhood that he was no ordinary man, that his true father was not Philip, but Zeus himself. Alexander half believed it. Perhaps he needed to. In Egypt, he found his chance to test the truth. Far in the western desert stood the Oracle of Siwa, a shrine of the god Ammon, whom the Greeks equated with Zeus. Legend said that priests there could speak the will of the divine. They could see destinies, crown kings, and reveal secrets no man dared utter. Pharaohs had sought the oracle. So had conquerors. Now Alexander would do the same. But the road to Siwa was perilous. Sandstorms blinded men and buried their supplies. Their guides vanished in the dunes. The desert swallowed all. The army despaired. Yet legend says the gods themselves guided Alexander. Some claimed ravens flew above the column, showing the path. Others said snakes slithered at night, marking the trail by their movement. Whether miracle or myth, the army reached the oasis of Siwa, a green jewel in the desert, where palm trees swayed above fresh water and the temple of Ammon gleamed in the sun. The moment had come. Alexander entered the temple alone, leaving even his generals behind. The sanctuary was dark, heavy with incense, its walls carved with images of rams, symbols of the horned god Ammon. The priests waited, cloaked in linen, their voices low, their eyes shining with something beyond human certainty. They led him into the inner chamber. What was said inside has remained one of history's deepest secrets. When Alexander emerged, his face was pale, almost trembling. He did not repeat the oracle's words, not to his generals, not to his closest friends. He kept them locked inside, as if they were too dangerous to reveal. But fragments slipped out. The priests had greeted him not as son of Philip, but as son of Zeus Ammon. They had told him he was divine, chosen by the gods to rule the world. Some sources whisper they went further, that they told him his conquest would stretch to the ends of the earth, but his life would be short. It was a blessing and a curse. From that moment, Alexander changed. He no longer saw himself as merely a Macedonian king. He demanded honors once reserved for gods. His soldiers began calling him divine. In Egypt, he was crowned Pharaoh, the living god on earth. To the Greeks, he was a hero beyond men. To the Persians, a king of kings. And in his own heart, he carried the certainty of a prophecy that lifted him above mortality. But here lies the haunting mystery. What exactly did the oracle tell him? Why did he guard the words so closely? Why, when asked later, did he only smile and say, "The oracle revealed to me what I most desired"? What was that desire? Was it proof of his divinity? A promise of endless empire? Or a whisper of his own doom? The silence around that prophecy became more powerful than any revelation. His generals speculated. His enemies feared. His mother, Olympias, rejoiced, for it confirmed the whisper she had planted in his youth. And Alexander himself carried the oracle's words like a fire, burning him forward into the east, into battles and blood, into glory and death. But perhaps the greatest power of the oracle was not the truth it spoke, whatever that truth was, but the fact that it left room for mystery. A mystery that drove a man to become more than human, or at least to die trying. The sands of Siwa had whispered to him, and the world would pay the price. When Alexander left the Oracle of Siwa, he was not the same man. His generals noticed it first. His step was heavier, his gaze more distant, as though his eyes no longer looked at men but through them into some vast horizon that only he could see. He began to carry himself not as a mortal king, but as something greater. Yet this transformation stirred unease. His soldiers, tough Macedonians who had marched with his father Philip II, did not like it. They had followed Alexander because he was their commander, their equal in the field, fighting beside them, eating the same rations, bleeding in the same battles. But now he spoke of his divine parentage, of Zeus Ammon, of destiny written in the stars. He began to demand proskynesis, ritual bowing and worship, a Persian custom, something Greeks despised. To them, no man was a god while still alive. This was not the Alexander they had known. This was a man reshaped by whispers in the dark. Still, he pressed forward. After Siwa, his hunger for conquest grew sharper, almost feverish. The prophecy, whatever it was, convinced him that limits were illusions. He had defeated Persia in part, but now he sought its total destruction. At Gaugamela in 331 BCE, he crushed Darius's massive army. Babylon, Susa, Persepolis all fell. The Persian throne was his. But even in triumph, the oracle's shadow clung to him. He ordered the burning of Persepolis, claiming it was revenge for the Persians' burning of Athens a century before. Yet some said it was madness, a drunken frenzy. Others whispered that he did it because the prophecy had told him to wipe away old empires to make room for his own. The oracle had not just given him courage, it had given him justification. Every act, every cruelty, every leap into danger could be excused. He was not acting as a man. He was fulfilling destiny. But what if the prophecy also carried a curse? Whispers spread that the priests had warned him of his death. Some claimed they had told him he would conquer the world, but only live as long as his shadow touched the ground. Others said they had warned him that no man could kill him. Only poison, the hand of the unseen. Alexander himself never denied it. He let the mystery linger. Perhaps he even believed it. This belief made him reckless. In India, at the Battle of the Hydasps, he faced war elephants and a king named Porus. The fighting was brutal, but Alexander charged headlong, nearly losing his life in the chaos. Later, in another Indian campaign, he was struck by an arrow that pierced his lung. He barely survived. To his men, it looked like the prophecy was failing. To Alexander, it was proof that he was untouchable, spared because the gods still had use for him. Each time he escaped death, his conviction grew. But conviction has a price. The more Alexander embraced his divinity, the more he alienated those closest to him. His general Parmenion questioned his decisions. His old friend Clitus the Black, who had once saved his life in battle, openly mocked him, saying Alexander was no god, just a man drunk on power. Alexander's response was fury. In a fit of rage, he killed Clitus with his own spear. The horror of the act silenced the camp. Had the oracle's promise turned him into a monster? The cracks deepened. His men grew weary. They marched through deserts, jungles, rivers, further from home than any Greek had ever gone. They longed to return, but Alexander pushed them onward, driven by something invisible, something whispered to him in that temple at Siwa. He wanted the edge of the world. He wanted eternity. Yet the further he marched, the more his soldiers began to ask the forbidden question. Was it really Alexander leading them, or was it the oracle? Back in Babylon, after years of conquest, Alexander returned to the city he had made his capital. He was only 32. His empire stretched from Greece to India, larger than any in history. Yet the oracle's prophecy still lingered. His enemies were gone, but death was waiting. And death came. In 323 BCE, after a night of feasting, Alexander fell sick. His fever burned, his body weakened. For days he could barely move, though his mind remained sharp. His generals surrounded him, demanding to know who would inherit his empire. Alexander, barely able to whisper, gave his final answer. To the strongest. Then silence. Some said he died of malaria. Others of typhoid. Many whispered poison. But others remembered the Oracle of Siwa. Hadn't it said his life would be short? Hadn't it told him he was more than mortal, but less than eternal? The prophecy was fulfilled. Yet the true power of the oracle was not in predicting his death, but in shaping his life. Without it, perhaps Alexander would have stopped after Persia. Perhaps he would have been content as a great king. But with it, he believed himself chosen, untouchable, divine. And so he became Alexander the Great. The whisper in the desert had ruled him as surely as his sword ruled nations. Babylon was silent. The mighty king lay dead, his body still, his empire trembling. Alexander the Great, who had been hailed as a god, who had marched farther than any man before him, was gone at just 32 years old. Yet as his generals argued over who would rule, one question lingered like smoke over the city. Did the oracle at Siwa know this would happen all along? The story of Alexander's visit to the Oracle of Ammon became one of history's greatest enigmas. No one truly knew what had been said in that dark chamber. Alexander never revealed the full prophecy. He let his companions guess, and history has been guessing ever since. Some believed the oracle had told him he was the son of Zeus Ammon, destined to rule the world. Others thought it warned him of his short life, a glory burned too brightly to last. And some whispered the most chilling theory of all, that the oracle's priests planted the seed of his downfall, binding him to a path that would consume him. Whatever the truth, the silence was as dangerous as the words. Because in silence, men imagine. His soldiers imagined their king was invincible. His enemies imagined he was cursed. And Alexander himself imagined he was more than mortal. That imagination reshaped the world. Think of the consequences. Because of a whisper in the desert, Alexander claimed divinity. He demanded worship, reshaped cities, and spread Greek culture across Asia. His empire fused East and West, Greek art with Persian wealth, Macedonian generals with Egyptian queens. This fusion became the Hellenistic world, the foundation for centuries of philosophy, science, and politics. And yet, because of that same whisper, Alexander's pride swelled. He alienated friends, murdered those who defied him, and marched his men to exhaustion. At the Hiphasis River, his soldiers refused to go farther. Even gods, it seemed, had limits when mortals grew weary. But Alexander never forgot the oracle. Even on his deathbed, he clung to the mystery. His generals begged for clarity. Who should succeed you? But he gave no clear answer. Perhaps because he believed the prophecy was not finished. Perhaps because he thought the gods would decide. Or perhaps, most haunting of all, because the oracle had told him that his empire would not outlive him. And it didn't. Within days of his death, his generals, the Dadekai, began carving his empire apart. Brothers in arms became enemies. Friends became rivals. The blood of Remus and Romulus seemed to echo once more. Empire born in murder, empire broken by betrayal. Yet the legend of the oracle lived on. Centuries later, Roman emperors, Egyptian priests, even medieval chroniclers spoke of that moment in Siwa. The desert shrine became more than a place. It became a symbol of how belief can change history. Because here lies the truth. It does not matter what the oracle actually said. What mattered was what Alexander believed. He believed he was chosen. He believed the gods had marked him. And that belief drove him beyond reason, beyond fear, beyond mortality itself. Without the oracle, perhaps Alexander would have been great. With it, he became eternal. But there is a darker lesson too. Was Alexander the master of prophecy or its prisoner? Did the oracle give him freedom or chain him to a destiny he could never escape? Perhaps the whisper in Siwa did not crown him. It consumed him. So we are left with the question that haunted his generals, his soldiers, and the world. If Alexander had never entered that temple, would history have been different? Would he have lived longer, ruled wiser, left behind a united empire? Or was he doomed the moment the oracle called him son of Zeus? The desert kept its secret. The gods kept their silence. And Alexander's story became a myth, half man, half divine, driven by a prophecy that no one else ever heard. The whisper at Siwa still echoes, and perhaps it always will. Story finished.